Okay, apparently we're live. Hello to anybody on replay who's come along to see us. Thank you very much for joining. And so, as you can see from the title, I am going to be chatting about whether you've noticed, or if you have noticed, that your confidence has taken a dive recently. What that might mean, what may cause your confidence to take a dive recently, or indeed what to do about it, which is kind of important. So we're in non-confident times, wouldn't you agree? So it's been quite a few years. Let's be honest. If your confidence has taken a dive over the last 2 or 3 years, I think you can see back to the start of the pandemic. I used to run a little daily podcast called the Social Distance Social Club. And quite honestly, it gave me something to do as much as anything. But in that time, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I have noticed it amongst a lot of my clients. In that time, since the start of the pandemic, the first thing that happened was people were desperate not to end up in hospital. So the dangers of riding their horses became very much at the front of their minds for selfless reasons, which was quite understandable. So for selfless reasons, people were saying must not end up in hospital because there's a COVID pandemic going on. Remember those days? There was no vaccine. There was not even a test. It was a scary time, and a lot of people's confidence dived then because A, you're not riding your horse as much, and B, you're focusing upon whether you can get help if you get hurt. So that wouldn't have helped, to put it mildly. Um, COVID hasn't quite finished its laugh, but since then we've come up with all sorts of bad news to replace it. At the moment, things are not looking good economically, and the situation's looking worse for a lot of people. If you're not particularly affected by the pound tanking and the price of energy, nonetheless, when you listen to the radio, when you watch the news, you see people in dire straits, very worried about what they're going to do. And that's not conducive to a confident, happy atmosphere. It might be nothing to do with horse riding, but it is the situation that we're in. We've got the situation in Ukraine, which which doesn't really be conducive to um, a confident outlook on the world. And this, quite understandably, if you've been noticing that your confidence with your horses has been dropping recently, it's entirely understandable. If you're affected by the economic situation, if you're aware of the conflict in Ukraine, having just come out of the pandemic, if you own a business, or perhaps you even got short shrift as an employee, it's been a rough few years. The thing that tends to happen is that when we feel that we're under attack, the part of our mind that responds with panic and fight and flight, the central part of our brain, which evolved really early, responds with survival strategies. Now, the survival strategies that your primitive mind, the panic part of your mind, resolves with, evolved so early, and it knows what it's doing when it's under attack. But unfortunately, the attacks that it was preparing for were lions and tigers and bears and ice ages. And it responds nowadays in exactly the same way to any other attack. So when we're under attack from COVID and when we're under attack from our own imaginations that we're going to have no help if we do get hurt on a horse, and when we're under attack that we're aware that we haven't ridden our horses as much in the summer of 2020 and now we're out of condition, and when those attacks continue into the current gloomy news items, our primitive mind will respond with survival strategies to survive from attacks from lions, tigers and bears and ice ages. And it's the only thing it can do. The things it responds with are survival strategies of anxiety and depression. Anxiety makes so much sense if you're a primitive mind in a primitive animal going through the woods and there's lions and tigers and bears behind every tree and bush. It does pay to be quite close to your panic button. It's a good idea. Do that. But of course, we're not going through the woods. Well, we are going through the metaphorical woods of COVID and trust in our horse riding ability and economic problems and the Russian-Ukrainian conflict and the bad news all round. And bless our little primitive minds, the only thing they can do is respond with anxiety. It's like, where's the next problem going to come from next? And you're looking for the next problem, where it's going to come from next. Well, if you've gone 4 years of looking where the next problem's coming from next, you'll find that you're not coping particularly well in the areas that matter of your life. Your career, with which we could include finance, or your role in life, which includes your status and everything like that. Your career, your status, your finance is one of the major areas of your life. And if you're feeling under attack from all these external forces, you're going to be looking for attack there. The second area of your life where you might be looking for attack because you feel anxious, there must be a lion, a tiger or bear behind every tree and bush, is relationships. Whether that's the relationship with your mum, with your family, with your sister, with your riding partner, with the other people on the yard and other people's opinions and the people who can't keep their nose out your business, or the relationship with your horse, or the relationship with your partner or your children or your neighbour, or work relationships. And you'll start being more aware of problems in those relationships. And some people, I'm sure if you followed me for any amount of time, some people have a really hard time with other people, especially at the yard, where people are interfering or saying you're doing it wrong, or they don't like you doing natural horsemanship if it's a classical yard, or they don't like you doing bite sizes or going along at the pace that you want, and they're only interfering through their insecurities. I might as well mention that straight away. But your primitive mind, under attack with all the bad news over the last 4 years, is doing a pretty good job, and now it's noticing problems in your relationships, including your relationship with your horse. And then the other area, so you've got career, which includes finance and status. You've got relationships and status. And lastly is self-esteem and status. You'll be finding that when you think of yourself as somebody who will deal with these problems, when you have your self-image as a capable person who is perfectly able to cope with any scenario, and let me just reassure you now that if you're a human being, you are a person capable of coping with any scenario, provided that you sensibly break it down into a correct bite sizes and take the steps that you're at the moment, and don't get overwhelmed. Then your status, your primitive mind will see this self-esteem and status and come to the conclusion that the reason why you're not getting on your horse. And the reason why you're not getting on with your family, and the reason why you're not getting on with the people in your yard, and the reason why you're not getting on with your riding partners, and the reason that you're not getting on in your job, and the reason why you're not getting on in your finances is all you. You are not the kind of person who is capable of doing this thing, your primitive mind will say. And it will look for those attacks. You are not capable of doing this, don't try it. You are not capable of that, don't try it. And if you keep this up in a gloomy atmosphere for 4 years, and we have had a gloomy atmosphere for 4 years, and if you keep it up, sorry, I'll re-say that. If your primitive mind keeps this up, then you will find that you have low self-esteem, low status, poor relationships, and generally feel that you can't get out of this, and high anxiety. So that's all a bit gloomy, isn't it? But if you've noticed over the last few years that your confidence with your horses has taken a dive or a dip, which was where we started off this, if I just look down at my screen here, I must remember while I waffle on, the title is your confidence diving recently? If it has been, this is why. If you then add in something like a little mishap, let's just have the horse do a little spin and boff you off your horse and do your ankle in and hobble around for 6 weeks. That will play on your mind much, much more, because that will be the anxious part of your brain, or the panicky part of your brain working with anxiety to get a little underlying bias. See? Told you were rubbish. And anything that, in fact, that was quite an extreme example. Even smaller things like not being able to stop the horse head shaking or anything like that will read into that meaning. And your primitive mind is doing that. And it's not the fact that the horse is head shaking that's the problem. It's the fact that you've read meaning into it. There's a great phrase that I've used before. It doesn't matter what your horse does. It matters how you choose to react to what your horse does. In other words, it doesn't matter whether the horse is head shaking or not being as ideal as you would like. It matters that you read the meaning into it, that you're a rubbish horse rider, you're in an unsafe position, you can't do this, everybody else is right, and so on and so on. So if you have taken a dive, that's why. And there's some things we can do to turn this around. And that's why I've come on today, just to turn this around a little bit. So the first thing there's 3 things that we need to do. By the way, while I'm here, just while I'm talking about turning it around, there's also a couple of little things to release anxiety straight away. Just a couple of little things that I'm just going to share with you now, so that if you're like, oh my God, Karl, you're absolutely right, and you're looking at the floor going, oh my God, this is a hopeless situation. Well, the answer is to do the opposite of that. Sitting, oh, hopeless, hopeless, hopeless. No, we're not going to do that. It's a really weird little thing. But if you lift your head up, roll your eyes up, and take a deep breath, what you were worried about down there will simply lose its power. It's the craziest thing. So if you find that you're going along, driving along maybe, walking along, doing some poo picking or whatever, and you're just dwelling and maudling on everything that's going wrong, caused by the processes that I've just mentioned, face up, eyes up, deep breath. And like evaporating clouds, they simply clear. They simply clear. So that's just one little weirdo thing about our bodies. And do you know who knows this best? Smokers. Because what does a smoker do? They're like, oh God, I feel awful. I need a fag. I need a fag. I'm going to go and have a fag break. And they run out of the building because you're not allowed to smoke in buildings now. So they're outcasts. Or snoutcasts, as I like to call them. Yeah, so, and they get this and they go, and they do exactly that. Actually, the chemicals inside cigarettes cause anxiety. So why do they feel calm? Because they're going eyes up, face up, deep breath. Second little trick that I don't know why our bodies are made the way that they are, but they are made the way that they are. This is stupid, but it works. If you're feeling overwhelmed, run some cold water into a bowl and splash it on your face. I don't know why it works. It just works. It just works. It's just the reaction that you have when cold water is splashed on your face. So, yes, two little short-term tricks. What we actually need to do is get a hold of the pattern of influence that's been causing us a problem over these 3 or 4 years. And there's two things to do. The first thing is to get control of your thoughts, in that I was just saying a moment ago that your primitive mind is encouraging you to read negative meaning into something. The horse is throwing its head around. The people on the yard are being rude to me because I'm rubbish. And that self-image, that self-esteem. The fact is, the horse is throwing its head around because the horse is throwing its head around, or there's pollen in the air, or something, or maybe you'll never know. And the people are rude to you because they're going through the same thing that I've just described, and they feel that their status is low and they're fighting for their status. I'm the most horsey, That bastard Karl. He doesn't know everything. I'm going to put him down. I'm the most horsey. So they're having their problems. The horse is having its problems with the pollen or whatever it is, that why it's shaking its head. Oh, it's just habitual. I don't know, and I may never know. But the point is, it's not because you're rubbish, whatever your primitive mind is saying. So we need to get a hold on our thoughts. We just need to. I have a little saying that you put a bouncer on the door of your mind, because you are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. If I said, uttered, or acted upon every little thought that went through my head, no, just no. Your mind is supposed to be a endless stream of suggestions of what's in the world. Have you seen this? Have you thought about this? Have you seen this? Have you thought about this? Some of it's useful, some of it's not useful, some of it's stupid, some of it's funny. I use the analogy, you can't see the clouds from here because the gazebo's in the way. I can see some clouds over there, and my word, that cloud looks a bit like a poodle. There was a thought, means nothing. So why should the thought, I'm a useless horse rider because Brenda's not talking to me, that also means nothing. As we speak here logically about it, you know it means nothing. So the bouncer that you put on the door of your mind needs to get rid of that thought straight away, because it's stupid. It's as stupid as that cloud looks like a poodle. As useful to any. Is it useful? No. Is it helpful? No. Are we getting anything from it? No. It's dismissible. I'd like to say it's gone, but of course we all know it's not gone, but it is dismissed because you are not your thoughts. It is your brain's job to go, have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you considered this? The bouncer on the door of your mind when these thoughts pop up, because what we mustn't do is allow these thoughts to come through unhindered and then fill up our primitive mind with images of being under attack. Putin's doing his thing, COVID's doing his thing, um, the NHS is doing their thing, Kwasi Kwarteng, what a good name. Kwasi Kwarteng's doing his thing, Liz Truss is doing her thing, and now Brenda from the Yard's doing her thing, and my mother's doing her thing, and my horse is doing his thing. We can't keep accepting all these in, because if your primitive mind has images of being under attack from, oh, I just love saying his name, Kwasi Kwarteng, under attack from Kwasi Kwarteng and your mother and the person down the yard and Putin and COVID and the NHS and everything, it's going to react like it's under attack. And what does it react with? Survival strategies of anxiety and depression. There we go. Depression is a survival strategy, by the way. I just want to point that out as all it is. All depression is your primitive mind trying to help you out because life's too dangerous. That's it. If you're living in your cave, this is mentioned in my book. If you haven't got my book, get my book. It's cheap, it's easy to read, it's accessible. karlgreenwood.co.uk. Get a book. If you're living in your cave and the ice age is just too terrible, it would do you no good at all to feel all positive and tell everybody, don't you worry, I'm going to run out, I'm going to catch a rabbit. There aren't no rabbits out there. You're feeling all positive, out you go. Oh, Mr. Positive, woo, never seen again. That's the end of you. That wouldn't do at all. And your brain knows this. It's not stupid. It knows this. It knows that the best thing for you to do is recognise there's no rabbits out there. There's no fruit out there. There's no apples out there. You can't even dig up worms. The ground's too frozen. When conditions are too overwhelming, best thing to do is to not be positive. And what's not being positive? It's being negative, isn't it? Be negative. Save energy. So being depressed isn't a very energy consuming thing, is it? You don't run around, buzz around, might as well clean the house while I can't sit down. No. Depression's absolutely the opposite. So very lethargic, you're saving energy. Very negative, you're staying in the cave. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to work. Eventually the ice age lifts and we can all feel positive and out we go. But in the modern world, where our imaginations not only can hear what's going on now, but can project to the future, all the things I've mentioned, all the COVIDs and NHS and war and strife and economic ruin, we're then projecting it into the future, not taking care of our thoughts, projecting the negative into the future because we're all anxious. It's got to stop. The future hasn't happened yet and the past is gone. We've just got now. So all those negative thoughts, all that I'm so useless, my fat ass, all that, it's got to stop. And it takes work as well. One of the things about depression is lethargy. So who wants to do work when we're lethargic? So when you have to, and this is how hard it is. It's like if you've got a habit of saying, oh, I'm so fit, I'm so unfit, I'm so fat, my fat ass, I probably won't get on this horse, which I've heard a lot in my rider confidence courses. Terrible thing to say to yourself, but I have heard it. And you've made the effort to say, no, I'm not doing that anymore. So when you approach your horse and someone's watching and you're scared that you're going to struggle to get up on that horse because you are unfit, there we are. But slagging yourself off ain't the done thing. It's not the done thing. You've got to stop. So now you're like, I've been listening to Karl, I'm not going to do that again. And someone's watching, you're about to get on the horse and you know you're going to struggle a bit. You know you're going to struggle a bit. But I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to slag myself off. And I'm going to get on this horse. and you approach the horse and you think, do not say my fat ass, do not say my fat ass, do not say my fat ass. And then you think, right, what can I say then? What can I say, or what can I think instead? Let's think of something. What can I say? Right. Okay. So let's try and work this out. I'm not as fit as I should be, so I am struggling. I could alter the stirrup length, which would give me an advantage. But what am I going to actually think other than slagging myself off? Okay. I'm going to think I'm going to get on this horse and I'm going to have some fun. And the fact that I'm struggling to get on this horse means that I'm self-aware. I can come up with some plan of action as to get fitter, and being self-aware, being capable, and being in control of my thoughts means I can fix it. Okay, I just thought of that off the top of my head. Took a lot, didn't it? I bet you were wondering what I was going to say. I wonder if you were going to say something and I'm like, come on, Karl, I thought of this straight away. But yeah, I quite like that, actually. It's true. It's not making things better than they are. I'm not suddenly a very fit bar. I'm fit, really. I'm very slim. It's not making things worse than they are. But it's making them as they are and putting it in a context with a brighter future. My point is this: did you see how much I struggled to think of something positive to say when it's so much easier to say the cliches that I have said for the last 30 years of woe is me, boo-hoo, I'm so rubbish, tra-la-la. It's so much easier to do the cliches, and that's an example of the work. You saw me mentally struggle then to do that, didn't you? Didn't you? You saw that, didn't you? Yeah. You saw me mentally struggle, and what an effort that was. Isn't that amazing? That's the amount of work that you need to do. And of course, when you're depressed, you're feeling lethargic. Who can be bothered? But hey, who can be bothered? Someone who wants a brighter future can be bothered. Who can be bothered to go to the gym? Someone who wants a brighter future. Who can be bothered to learn something? Who can be bothered to learn a new language? Who can be bothered to do anything? If you work at something, you'll get it. Who can be bothered? Nobody. I wish that I could just lay it. It was in the Matrix. They just lay on a gurney and they plug him in, and he goes, "I know kung fu." That's not how to learn kung fu. You don't just lay down and do it. And my hypnosis is really good, and it will get you into this positive mindset. But don't think it's that magic wand where you're just going to lay down and just wake up and go, "Oh, I can do kung fu. I can jump badminton." So there's an example of how much work it is. But you must do it, because that work, I'll remember that little thing I thought of saying there, and I will work it in to my habits until it becomes a habit. And then after becoming a habit, it becomes your character. So it is worth putting that effort in. Step 1, watch your thoughts. Go to the work to have the bouncer on your door and be aware that you are not your thoughts. Second part, you need to clear out some of the garbage that has filled up your primitive brain and made it respond, especially over these last 4 years. Your primitive brain has started overfilling and reacting to stuff that is mostly imaginary. Most of the things you worry about don't happen. 90% of the things you worried about in the past didn't happen. So we need to empty out some of that garbage. And the way to do that is by the kind of sleep characterized by rapid eye movement. When you go to sleep over the night, you have 20 minutes of what's called REM, rapid eye movement, REM sleep. And that is the process of getting this garbage out, clearing off all that negative emotion, and then taking the actual memory and just turning it into a story. You know how you can have a dreadful day, have you in tears, and then later on, a week later, you can be telling your friend about it and laughing. And then this happened, and then this happened. It's not that you've forgotten it, it's that the emotion's gone. You're not crying now, you're laughing, or at least just telling a story. That process is done through REM, rapid eye movement sleep. When you go to sleep, REM goes on for about 20 minutes. And then you get rest and recuperation, because REM is a very energy intensive process. And then you get rest and recuperation. And then you get energy intensive REM again, sorting out these emotions. And then you get rest and recuperation. And then you get REM again. And then rest and recuperation until your 7 or 8 hours is done. And then you wake up and those emotions have gone. If you take control of the thoughts in your head, realize that you are not your thoughts and do not give meaning to events, then not only will your primitive brain not be filled up, but it will also give you the opportunity to use this REM. So we need to arrange our lifestyles where our sleep patterns are working for us. And you may need to not drink alcohol just before bed because it disturbs your sleep patterns. You may need to not drink caffeine just before bed. You may need to start turning your lights down, turn a few lights off an hour before it's time to go to bed so that you feel a bit more like going to bed and not sitting up watching Britain's greatest car crashes until 2 o'clock in the morning. If you can sort out your sleep patterns, and you can, and as you get into the habit, your anxiety will lower and then you will get better and better quality sleep. But this involves sorting out your lifestyle. One night's sleep won't solve it. I wish it would. Wouldn't it be great if I could say, do you know what to do if you're suffering from anxiety and depression and everything seems too much and overwhelming? Have a good night's sleep. Well, it's kind of true, but you need to arrange your lifestyle so that a good night's sleep is the norm. What you can also do is artificially, especially if you're waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning with everything running around your head, what you can do is artificially use your REM to clear out some of that by using hypnosis sessions or meditation sessions. And you could do that at lunchtime. You could do that, find half an hour and do because remember it's 20 minutes of REM. So your average hypnosis session has got an induction for 10 minutes and then 20 minutes of actual hypnosis session. So hypnosis sessions, meditation sessions, you could actually use them to artificially induce rapid eye movement sleep, or rapid eye movement processes, because obviously you're not asleep because it's lunchtime, although I tend to fall asleep. They are. And that will start taking some of these negative attacks from out of your primitive brain. And if your primitive brain feels less under attack, then it'll be less likely to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. If you do that, your primitive brain will feel less and less under attack, so it will respond less and less with survival strategies of anxiety and depression. In addition, do not fill it even more with imaginary negative thoughts about your self-esteem or your career or your status or what so and so meant by that, other people's opinions, your relationship with your mother, or for that matter, your finances, quatting, conflicts that you can't do anything about, or COVID. There we are. I'm going to leave that there. That's been fairly deep. But this is the way that our minds work. We need to get hold of this negative outlook, and that's how I do it. If you look around this video, I'm going to put up links to my own hypnosis, which are related to horses. I used to be a hypnotherapist and do stress, anxiety, depression all the time, so I do know what I'm talking about. My hypnosis now are about horses, enjoying your horses. Get my book if you haven't got my book. It's all around here. There's free stuff as well. There's bolting, bucking and rearing. A lot of people worry about that. That's for free. But so many people worry about it that it's like, oh, just have it. And then you don't have to worry about that ever again. Anyway, I'm off now. Thanks for listening.